Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we are breaking down the complex and, let's be honest, kind of frustrating world of international trade. But don't worry, we're not going to bore you with endless charts or dry spreadsheets. No way. Instead, we're relying on a highly accurate, totally awesome monkey metaphor sourced directly from our material today to see exactly how a simple banana can explain global economics. Now, here's a question that hits your wallet directly. Why, when things could be perfectly cheap, does the government intentionally step in to make them more expensive? It sounds crazy, right? Well, to figure out why they purposely drive up prices, we need to take a quick trip to two fictional economies that actually perfectly mirror our own world.
All right, let's kick things off with part 1, the economics of Monkeyland.
Let's set the stage and see how free markets naturally operate, since this brilliantly illustrates the basic law of supply and demand. Okay, on one side, we have Monkeyland. They've got a ton of monkeys but very few bananas, so demand is sky high, but supply is super low. On the flip side, we have Banana Land. They have an absolute abundance of bananas, but hardly any monkeys to eat them. Because Banana Land grows so many, they can sell them dirt cheap. This creates the exact perfect setup for international trade. Monkeyland needs bananas, Banana Land has plenty to sell. When Monkeyland buys those bananas, that's importing. When Banana Land sells them, that's exporting. It's like puzzle pieces snapping together perfectly.
And when the Monkeyland government just steps back and doesn't use any tariffs, boom, we get free trade. Monkeys can buy cheap bananas completely freely, Banana Land monkeys make money, Monkeyland monkeys get cheap food. Everybody wins. Monkeys are friends, the ecosystem thrives, and life is just good. Well, at least until bureaucracy decides to step in. Which brings us to part 2. But what are tariffs? Everything totally changes the second the government gets involved in this happy little exchange. A tariff is, at its core, just a tax. It's an extra charge forced on you to bring that banana from Banana Land into Monkeyland. Think about the last time you bought something internationally online, right? You probably had to pay a delivery fee. Well, a tariff acts exactly like a mandatory government service fee right on top of that. The actual price of the banana from Banana Land stays exactly the same, but now the Monkeyland consumer has to hand over extra cash directly to their own government just for the privilege of buying it. Now, these tariffs can be a flat dollar amount, but most monkey countries use a percentage of the item's cost. This is known as an ad valorem tariff. And, as our source cheekily points out, bureaucrats basically just use this Latin phrase to make themselves sound smart. And honestly, it gets even more ridiculous. These taxes can get absurdly specific. Bureaucracy is so intense that an unripe banana can literally have a totally different tariff rate than a ripe banana. I mean, not even bananas can escape the red tape. But before we look at the real damage tariffs can cause, we've got to quickly talk about two fundamental terms that governments are constantly obsessing over. A trade surplus is when a monkey country exports more bananas than they import. A trade deficit is when they import more than they export. Governments are always using tariffs to try and aggressively manipulate these two states, which, well, brings us to the real-world consequences.
Let's dive into part 3, the ripple effects of tariffs.
So when a government actually slaps on these taxes to fix a trade deficit, who really pays the price? Spoiler alert, it's not who you think. When that tariff hits, the price of the imported Banana Land banana shoots straight up. Now the local Monkeyland banana store? Oh, they are absolutely thrilled. Why? Because there's suddenly no more cheap competition. But here's the catch. Without that competition, the local store is going to raise their prices too, usually hovering just under the new inflated price of the imported ones. And worse, because that local store doesn't really have to try as hard to compete anymore, the overall quality of the bananas usually goes down.
And this is exactly where you, the everyday consumer, get totally squeezed. Monkeys are now completely stressed out, forced to make a terrible choice. Do you pay a massive premium for a good imported banana, or do you eat a lower quality local banana just to save some cash? It perfectly mirrors the choices we all have to make at the grocery store or the car lot right now. On top of that, small local monkey businesses that actually rely on importing goods to run their shops suddenly face these massive price spikes too, which literally pushes some small banana stands right out of business.
Part 4. Why governments use tariffs. Okay, so if tariffs stress everyday citizens out, crank up prices, tank the quality of goods, and hurt small importing businesses, why on earth do governments love using them so much? Well, governments will constantly claim it's to help local small businesses by making local goods more attractive. But as we literally just saw, that's not always true. Often, the real motives are far less noble. Sometimes the Monkeyland government is just plain jealous of Banana Land's booming economy and wants to slow it down. Other times,
Tariffs are wielded as aggressive bargaining tools for totally unrelated political negotiations. But the biggest, most common reason of all, revenue. The monkey government just wants more money. Honestly, that's pretty much the whole shebang.
Part 5. Trade Wars and New Frontiers.
So what happens when you slap a massive tax on your neighbor's primary export? Well, they usually don't just sit there and take it. As our source wonderfully puts it, this is called a trade war. You could say it's guerrilla warfare. And it really is. Banana Land gets mad, so they retaliate with tariffs on Monkey Land's exports. Then Monkey Land retaliates back. It escalates like crazy, and suddenly this silly monkey business transforms into a destructive, vicious cycle that just makes everything wildly expensive for everyone involved.
Which leads us to Part 6, the real 1993 Banana War.
Now, if you're sitting there thinking this cute cartoon metaphor is just some hypothetical situation, it is time for a major reality check. A real-world banana war actually happened. Seriously, back in 1993, European monkeys gave Caribbean monkeys a discount on banana tariffs to help support their struggling economy. Well, American monkeys imported a lot of bananas too, and they felt this was completely unfair, that Europe was basically playing favorites. So America retaliated with heavy tariffs on European products. The conflict got so heated that the WTO, which our source amazingly calls the World Trade Orangutan, actually had to step in to mediate. Believe it or not, this little trade war raged on for nearly 2 decades before the EU finally gave the US lower tariffs to end the whole mess.
I want to take a brief, really wonderful aside here. To celebrate building a massive troop of 240,000 subscribers, the creators of this fantastic economic breakdown actually donated $500 to Save the Chimps. It's an awesome sanctuary in Florida, rescuing real chimpanzees from research labs and the pet trade. It's just a really great reminder that understanding how our world works can actually help us actively build a better one. Apes together strong, right?
But listen, the world of economics never actually stops evolving. Historically, tariffs have always targeted physical products. Things monkeys can physically touch with monkey hands, like bananas. But how are governments going to deal with digital products moving forward? We are talking about e-books, AI-generated artwork, NFTs. And what about environmental impacts? Some governments out there are already experimenting with environmental tariffs, literally taxing products based on how much of a carbon footprint it took to make them, essentially penalizing those who harm the natural monkey habitat.
Which leaves us with a massive, looming question for the future. As our global economy goes increasingly digital and as environmental awareness keeps rising, how do you think governments will effectively tariff invisible digital goods and complex climate impacts? It is a wild new frontier for international trade. Think about how these invisible tariffs might actually show up on your next digital receipt. It's wild to think about. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and I will catch you next time.